Oh yes, here's something you don't see every day, boys and girls. From South Africa, an Andre Thorburn creation. We're going to take a close look at this little reclamation project. Stick with me, guys. This is going to be good. Hi gang, Rob here. It's the evening of 22 April 2015, and this one has been a labor of love. And this isn't going to be a knife review. It's just going to be kind of a show and tell and a little story. My sharpening customer Matt is the owner of this gorgeous Andre Thorburn L36 in a stainless Damascus, I believe, or Damasteel. And he had this knife for a little bit, not too long, and he wasn't really happy with the edge as done by Andre, so he wanted to send it back to have him take another crack at it. And Andre actually recommended a friend of his, and I believe a compatriot who lived in the US. So Matt did send it to him to have a new edge put on it, and frankly it came back worse than the first time. And you know, he wanted to kind of keep the knife special, and you know, he thought if he couldn't have Andre sharpen it, a sharpener that Andre referred him to would be the next best thing. Well, that proved, I guess, not to be the case. So after opening the box after the sharpening attempt, Matt emailed me frantically and told me the story and asked if I could kind of help out, and you know, sort of expressed regret for not sending it to me in the first place, which I appreciate your faith in me, Matt. I'm not sure I deserve it all the time, but anyway, here's kind of what we ended up with. You know what? Before I show you what we ended up with, I took a couple stills of the edge before I went to work on it, so stay tuned. Take a look at them. I'm not sure they're great, but maybe you can get the idea. I'm not sure that picked up extremely well, but basically what we had was at the heel of the edge, which actually is done very well by Andre, just a very slight thickening at the plunge grind at the ricasso, but we had a big nasty gouged flat right here, and then the edge kind of went away to nothing, and it was very jagged and sawtoothed and kind of a zigzag pattern. You know, obviously it was done on some kind of a belt sander, and the guy didn't have a very steady hand, and it was ugly. But thankfully, there's a lot of blade here, and even more thankfully, it's very thin, just a work of art, this grind. So here's what we end up with at a 15-degree secondary bevel with an extremely scant 18-degree micro. And when I say scant, I mean just enough to, you know, clean up the burr and establish an angle. Very, very light pressure with a 1,000 grit stone and a 2,000 grit polishing tape, followed by a strap, and boy did it come out nice. Before we start talking about the knife, this is sort of for you, Matt, more than the viewers. I just want you to see and hear the end result. I'm going to be quiet, just listen. Well, that wasn't the best S-curve cut. There. It's just yummy. I kind of wish this knife were mine, to tell you the truth. So, this is kind of new for us here on the Apostle P channel, isn't it, guys? As I said, Andre, a South African maker of extremely well-priced custom knives. This series of his knives, it looks like from my research, seem to sell from $600 to $825, and with the steel choice, the material choices, and the amount of detail work, I gotta believe this one is up at the end, the upper end of that range. You know, I don't work on a lot of $800 customs, and frankly, for me personally, I'm not interested in a lot of $800 customs. But I got to tell you, this guy does some work. Let's look it over real quick. We have a 3 3/4 inch blade of that stainless Damascus, and you know, the hollow grind is etched very lightly, but look at the flats. See how that mirror polished flat grind, you can still see the pattern where the layers of harder and softer steel meet the surface. So cool. And how about that blade shape? It's kind of like Daryl Ralph meets Benchmade 710 meets Buck 110. I mean, how could I not love this blade shape? I mean, oh, it is this absolutely seductive clip point where the slight recurve of the edge matches the top of the hollow grind and just flows with the spine and the clip and the graceful swedge. See how it's it has a little belly itself. Oh, are you looking at that? Just get a glimpse. Blade stock is just 1/8 of an inch. It's not overbuilt. It's just built well. This handle is pretty interesting, isn't it? Look closely. Hope the light does this justice. The liners, or the frame, as you might call it, depending on how you see it, are titanium, and they are anodized a beautiful sort of aqua shade of blue. And then as we come to the spine and follow them around, you'll see that I'll call it file work, but I'm sure it's not. But you can see that the scallops in those liners are anodized a deep sort of purplish bronze, and then we have red liners, a backspacer that appears to be made of carbon fiber, and then scales of gorgeous blue and black lightning strike carbon fiber. Just look at the way the light plays with that stuff. I'm not a big lightning strike guy, but I got to tell you, and the reason I'm not a big lightning strike guy is because it's very hard to use. It's very hard to achieve precision in a finished product with it. You have wires poking out at you. In fact, I didn't think there were any, but there might be one right there. It's pretty slight. It's hard to get your transitions right if you're going to do bolsters like this knife has. But it is pretty good looking, I gotta say. The bolsters, I believe, are also titanium, but let's see if I can find a magnet. Well, I have one here somewhere. I'm not going to worry about it. I believe they're also titanium, not anodized. And they are beautifully engraved with kind of a Celtic knot pattern. Now, if you look closely, there are very, very small-headed torque screws affixing the bolsters, one here and one right up here at the front, and also the scales to the titanium frame. They're nicely hidden in the pattern, I think. Not sure of the construction. We do have a solid backspacer. I'm not sure how the knife is located, how well the scales and frame slabs are anchored to keep things true. It's not a knife review, we don't really care. A perfectly designed cutout in the locking leaf. The tension is more than adequate. The action of the lock bar is very linear. You don't feel like it's running out of juice where it locks up. And it locks up maybe just a hair shy of 50%, exactly where you'd want it. That's insanely perfect lockup, guys. You know, there's that thing in the knife community, insanely early lockup. That's just insane. This is insanely perfect lockup. Nice full engagement of the locking leaf into an area of the blade where it's just not going anywhere. If it wears, I don't know that it will. This knife's probably never going to see any hard use, but it's never going to wear to a point where it reaches full travel to the other liner. Just beautifully done. Oh, by the way, did I mention it's a flipper? It's more of a push button flipper than a light switch, but you can do it either way. Here's a light switch, which just wastes a lot of energy to me. Beautiful push button. Watch this. Oh, I'm not sure it really gets much better than that, boys and girls. That's very light pressure. Watch, just barely pushing. Just beautiful action. Blade stays where you put it, but it falls on itself with very little effort. Centering is money. Blade play, yeah, there's none. Frankly, I would have a lot of trouble using this knife for anything but opening mail. Unless, you know, maybe Heidi and I went to the theater and it was downtown. Maybe we're dressed up a little and I slipped this baby into my slacks with its nearly perfectly executed sculpted titanium pocket clip. Looks like it's riding just a bit off the scale. I'm not sure it needs to because I think there's a decent amount of flex in it. But, you know, maybe on the way to the car it gets a little dark and maybe a bad guy presents himself. Not wishing to cause a disturbance, we leave the pistol in the holster and out comes Mr. L36. Wouldn't mind resharpening it after a life-saving maneuver, but nobody wants to get in a knife fight. Just sort of fantasizing there. What this is a piece of pocket jewelry. And oh, what effective jewelry it is. I don't know anything about this steel. All I can tell you is the edge that it takes is phenomenal. And you know, you don't have to be a great sharpener to get a knife sharp that's ground this thinly. So gorgeous. Yeah, I'm sure you've read by now. It's riding on an IKBS bearing system. I did not take it apart. Not going to take it apart. Let's look closely at Andre's work. Transitions are money. No gaps between scales and bolsters. Where metals meet, there you can see the contrast between the unanodized bolsters and the sort of aqua liners. Oh, the jimping, both on the flipper tab and on the spine, just perfect. Not gaudy, not ostentatious, not look at me, I have jimping. It's just low profile, square, and sharp. Just does its job. The holes ground in the flipper tab just so complement the rest of the knife. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of recurve blades, but yeah, on this one it works so well. And oh, that spine. Oh, that magnificent spine. I'm trying to get this with the right reflection for you guys. This is a maker that, although I've heard of, I'm not super familiar with. But I love his eye. I love his design eye. And man, I love his finished product. Wow. Just beautiful. Isn't it? So Matt, I think you're going to get some real enjoyment out of this knife now, because you won't be looking at that jacked up edge every time you flip it open. You'll be staring at that 15-degree secondary bevel, trying to see if you got any spinach in your teeth. Beautiful. Glad I could help. I'm glad I got to spend some time with it. That's all for this one, my friends. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and Matt's Thorburn are sharp.